The lecture hall on Station Verith 9 had seen many things in its 400 years of existence: political upheavals, 3 supernova alerts, one very unfortunate graduation ceremony involving combustible spores, but it had never seen anything quite like Mara Ellison. She sat in the 3rd row, eating a sandwich, during a Level 7 beast containment briefing. Professor Cale Veyron stared at her from the podium, his 4 gray eyes narrowing in sequence, a gesture that, among his species, communicated profound, deeply personal offense. Around Mara, 32 cadets from 11 different species sat in absolute rigid terror, their various biological stress responses activating in colorful ways. One Thurvian cadet had turned completely translucent. A Dreckery in the back row had secreted a small defensive puddle beneath his seat. And the human was eating a sandwich. "Cadet Ellison," Cale said, his voice carrying the precise frequency that had once caused a Grenthari warlord to faint. She looked up. Chewed. Swallowed. "Professor Veyron? Do you understand," he said slowly, "what resides in that containment unit behind me?" She leaned slightly to look past him at the reinforced chromium vault, 3 meters tall, sealed with 7 independent lock systems, surrounded by a crackling field of neural suppression energy. Warning lights pulsed red across its surface in a rhythm that the Galactic Safety Codex described as universally recognized across all documented sapient species as a signal of mortal danger. "A Verithian shadow stalker," Mara said. "Apex predator. Native to the ash jungles of Morvith Prime. 12 meters when fully extended, adaptive camouflage, empathic disruption field, venom that dissolves calcium-based skeletal systems in under 4 minutes." She paused. "You covered this in the pre-brief notes. Good reading, by the way." Cale blinked all 4 eyes simultaneously. "And yet you're eating." "I'm hungry." She held up the sandwich as evidence. "Also, I read that shadow stalkers are attracted to fear pheromones." Seemed smart to stay calm. The Thurvian cadet turned even more translucent. Cale had spent 63 years mastering the art of beast taming, a discipline so dangerous that the Interspecies Academy only allowed it to be taught on stations with independent escape pod systems. He had personally tamed 17 creatures classified as extinction risk. He had survived 3 documented encounters with the Void Leviathan of Sector 8. He was, by any reasonable metric, one of the most terrifying individuals in the known galaxy. He was not prepared for Mara Ellison. "Today," he announced to the class, forcing his voice back to its authoritative register, "we will observe the shadow stalker in a controlled environment. You will maintain your positions. You will not make sudden movements. You will not speak unless spoken to. And under absolutely no circumstances," he looked directly at Mara, "will anyone approach the creature." He turned to the vault. He entered the 7-digit unlock sequence. He activated his neural suppression dampener, a personal device that cost more than most planetary vehicles and allowed him to maintain cognitive function in the presence of the stalker's empathic field. The locks disengaged with a sound like a dying star. The vault door swung open. The Verithian shadow stalker unfolded itself into the room. It was like watching darkness learn to move. The creature rippled out of the containment unit in absolute silence, its form flickering between visibility and void, 12 meters of ancient predatory intelligence expanding to fill the space with a presence that was less seen and more felt, a deep, primal wrongness that pressed against every survival instinct in every brain in the room. The Dreckery cadet's defensive puddle expanded significantly. The stalker's 12 eyes, each one a different color, each one processing a different spectrum of reality, swept the room. Its empathic disruption field rolled outward like a tide, and Cale watched his cadets crumple under it, shoulders hunching, breath shortening, several species bioluminescent stress markers flaring bright. He checked the neural suppressor at his belt. Functioning perfectly. He looked at Mara. She had set down her sandwich. She was leaning forward in her seat, elbows on her knees, chin in her hands. She was smiling. Oh, she breathed, it's beautiful. The stalker's 12 eyes converged on her. Cale's hand moved to his emergency containment remote. Every protocol he had ever written, every lesson he had ever taught, every survival instinct accumulated over 6 decades screamed at him to activate it. He didn't. He was, despite everything, a scientist. And he had never seen a shadow stalker tilt its head before. The creature was enormous. Ancient. It had eaten things that had names in 4 languages, all of them warnings. Its empathic field was currently causing 29 cadets to experience varying degrees of existential dread. And it was tilting its head at the human like a confused animal encountering something entirely outside its experience. Mara stood up. Cadet, Cale started. I'm not going to touch it, she said, which was not the reassurance it might have been, because she was absolutely walking toward it. I just want to. Ellison, the empathic field alone will. It's uncomfortable, she agreed, still walking. Like being watched from inside your own head. But it's not malicious. It's just, searching. She stopped about 3 meters from the stalker. Looked up at it. You're looking for something to be afraid of, aren't you? That's how you hunt. You feel what they feel. You amplify it. A pause. I'm not afraid. The stalker lowered its head. Slowly. It brought one massive, dark matter-dense head down to her level, 12 eyes focusing, the empathic field pressing against her like a physical weight, probing, searching for the fear that should have been there. And finding nothing. Not the absence of fear. Not suppression or numbness or the chemical calm of medication. Genuine curiosity. The creature made a sound. It wasn't in any register Cale's translation implant recognized. It was low and long, and it resonated in the bones of the station. Can I pet it? Mara asked. The entire class stopped breathing. Cale Veyron, Beast Master, holder of the Galactic Order of Containment Excellence, veteran of the Morvith culling, stood at his podium and said absolutely nothing, because he had no words for what he was witnessing. Mara reached up. She placed her hand, her small, calcium skeletal, entirely unarmored human hand, against the side of the shadow stalker's head. The stalker leaned into it. The room was silent for a very long time. How, said the Thurvian cadet, who had regained just enough opacity to speak. Humans, Cale said. He was surprised by how steady his voice was. It seems, and I will be extensively revising my curriculum based on today's events, that humans are an anomaly in the empathic field. The stalker hunts through fear. It follows the signal. But the human brain, he watched Mara scratch behind what might generously be called the creature's ear, while it made the bone-resonating sound again, appears to respond to danger with a neurochemical cocktail that includes, alongside the expected stress hormones, a significant spike of dopamine and norepinephrine. He paused. They find it interesting. That's not possible, the Dreckery said. She is currently petting a shadow stalker, Cale said. Revise your definition of possible. Mara looked back at the class over her shoulder. Her smile was enormous. He's really soft, actually. Like, you know that texture, kind of like velvet but cooler? Very relaxing. She turned back to the stalker. You're a good boy, aren't you? Yes, you are. The stalker, whose species had no word for good boy and whose last interaction with a non-prey organism had ended in what xenobiologists called the Morvith incident of 2287, made the sound again. Louder. The station's seismic sensors would later log it as a minor event. It was, Cale realized, purring. He would spend the next 3 years writing papers about this moment. He would present at 11 conferences. He would revise the Shadow Stalker entry in the Galactic Bestiary 4 times. He would lose 3 colleagues who insisted the footage was fabricated. But right now, he just stood at his podium and watched Mara Ellison, human cadet, 3rd row, sandwich enthusiast, rest her forehead against the skull of the most dangerous creature in the known galaxy, eyes closed, completely at peace. "Professor Veyron," she said eventually. "Yes, Cadet Ellison. I'd like to request this one as my practical assignment partner." He looked at the Shadow Stalker. The Shadow Stalker looked back at him with 12 eyes. It had, at some point in the last 4 minutes, rested its enormous head in Mara's lap. Kale Veyron, who had stared down creatures that broke lesser beings simply by existing, picked up his datapad and made a note. "Humans, do not hunt. Do not fear. Do not, under any circumstances, underestimate." He looked up. "Approved," he said. Somewhere in the Galactic Safety Codex, the entry for Shadow Stalkers still read, "No known method of peaceful contact." Someone, eventually, would have to update that. They would cite a human. They always did.